right, welcome back everybody. Here we are looking at the final video in the playlist. This is part 3B, where we're going to complete out our MCP client, talking with our MCP server, and watching data go back and forth between the two. So here in this video, what we're actually going to be looking at is finalizing all the code and everything else, but we're going to look at the additional imports as well, and why we need some of them, and why we've made some of the selections that we have. And then, right, we're going to complete out the main function that we talked a little bit about in the last video. Here we're going to see that entire function written out, so that really kind of closes out the client. And then from there, we'll see our getter and setter actually execute from our client to our MCP server. Prereqs for this one, make certain that you have the code set up as you saw it at the end of the previous video, right, part 3A. Make certain that you have all that code as it was set up. And then have the MCP server published when you run your client. We're going to talk about that in this video, so don't worry if you don't have it published right now. We'll walk you through it. It's not a big deal. But just remember that when you do go to run your client, you're going to need to have your MCP server published. And again, we'll walk you through that, so don't worry about it if you don't have that yet. But here, what we're looking at, part 3, right? We're finishing everything out for our complete MCP comms. At the end of this video, this is what you're going to have, right? You'll have a good idea, and you'll have a pretty solid tool to at least test your MCP server and hopefully a better understanding about things that are going on. But with that being said, right, let's go ahead. We'll take a look at the finalization of the code. We'll watch the whole thing execute. A couple of nuances to make certain of that we're looking at on the MCP server side as well. So we'll jump into all that. All right. All right, so we're back here at the code, and the very first thing that we're going to need to do is we are going to need to bring in an additional import. All right, so we brought in that additional import, and one thing I want to point out really quick is you'll notice this line, right? So this actual transport protocol here is being deprecated, the SSE. And what that is, it stands for the server sent events, and really the reason that it's being deprecated is because the SSE has a couple of issues in it where having long-term open pipelines or open sockets can get a little bit tricky, right? Whether you're using AWS Lambdas or Google Cloud Functions, it doesn't really matter. We all know that Lambdas and Cloud Functions have a certain time to live, right? And so when it came to some of these open sockets being allowed to live the time that they needed to, there were some problems here. So that's why it's being deprecated. The reason I bring that up, there's nothing wrong with this, and this is really how you're going to communicate right now with MCP servers that are set up within N8N. This is just the transport that's still in there. But I have a feeling in very short order, everything is going to be moved over to the stream transport protocols. So just keep that in mind, that this one protocol thing is going to be changing. This is early 2026 when I'm putting this together. Just keep that in mind, that this is going to be one of the things that you need to play around with. But for now, it's fine. We can use it. And so I've pulled in that import statement. And what we're going to do now is go ahead and set up our main. We're going to do this in a couple of different sections. I'll get the code written out, and then we'll come back and talk about each one, because main gets a little bit long. All right, so here you can see that we're setting up our transport layer, right? This is what we're going to be communicating with. Here it's going to be the SSE. We're setting up a new URL, and we're getting that MCP endpoint from our .env file, right? We looked at this previously, so obviously change this to your real endpoint URL and this to the actual bear token you're using. But in here is where we have our endpoint and our bear token, and that's what we're ultimately using, right? We're just setting up a URL. That's our endpoint. We're putting in the headers, right? In this case, it's going to be bear from the authorization. And here we're putting in our bear token, right? And so that allows us to kind of, have that initial initial security layer that we set up on our MCP server earlier. And so now that we kind of understand this, I'm going to go ahead and add in the rest of the code that we can come back here and talk about here in just a moment. All right, so pretty straightforward. We have our client, and then we are just calling the connect function on our client, and we're passing in our transport layer. Now remember where our client came from. If we remember earlier in this video, we just had this client, right? Pretty basic, pretty straightforward. You can do some more with the capabilities. We talked about that being functions, tools, things along those lines, right? So this is where we're getting our client from, and this is where we're getting our transport layer from. And so this is our initial connection into our MCP server. So now that we've looked at that, let's go ahead and actually set up the code that is going to listen to the information that we want to get back. It could be, success from sending or getting information, whatever. And that's what we're going to set up next. All right, so this is just some of the information that you're going to be able to see now that you have a connection into the N8N server. It'll give you some better output, a little bit better understanding, what kind of response you're getting from the set or the get or any number of things really, right? And so pretty much at this point, we are ready to go ahead, compile this, run it, and take a look to see what we're actually getting back from our MCP client. So let's go ahead and we'll pull up a terminal and take a look at that here next. All right, so now we've got everything set up, right? We've got our transport, we've got this client, right? Pretty straightforward, nothing's changed. We've got our MCP tools, it's just file we're gonna log to, right? This is our file logger. And the reason that I'm putting this here is just because of the weight. And if I want to put in additional information, it's always easier, even though the one-line function is kind of annoying. The reason I have it in here is, in case I want to build on it, right? It just makes the code cleaner. So then we have the create interface, right? Just the read line, whatever. Then we have the ask the question. This is what we've been looking at, right? We're going to put Sally into the spreadsheet, and when we make a request, we're going to get Joe back, whatever. But again, this is stuff we worked on previously, no big deal there. We have the set MCP server, right? This is where we put in Sally into the spreadsheet, and this is where we get from the MP server. This is where we get Joe back out from the spreadsheet. And then here we have our main, right? This is where we set up our transport layer. This is where we actually connect. This is where we can actually see some of the tooling, right? And we'll get logged out into the MCP. So this way we can just kind of see what's going on underneath the hood for our tools, really our capabilities, our functions, what's there. And then we have main, right? Then we're just calling it, and really we ask a question and then it executes, right? So from here, whatever it is that we ask it to do, right? Set or get. All right, so now all we need to do is set this. All we need to do really is just kind of set this up, run it. So I'm gonna go ahead and compile it. Okay, so far so good. That's half the battle. One of the things I want to do really quick, I need to pull in another screen here so you can see the actual spreadsheet as it is, right? This is Joe that we put in yesterday. Today's the 2nd. And so we'll be able to see that, and we see that Sally is not in here, okay? And so back over here, we're going to actually now go ahead and run our application, let it do its thing. And so the first thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and set, right? We're just calling the set. This is going to put Sally in. No big deal there. come back over to the spreadsheet, and there's Sally, and you can see today is the 2nd. We still have Joe from the 31st, and if we come back over, now the output gets a little funky because of the await stuff here, but when we say get, right now we're going to get Joe. Go ahead and return, let that return, and we can see here that we get Joe from the 31st, row number 2, and again, when we look at Joe, row number 2 from the 31st, okay? And so this is still waiting for input. But again, like I said, the output gets a little wonky, but you get the idea, right? So we've set everything up. I'm just going to go ahead and exit out. And so we've closed out. Here you can see that we are getting something out of our MCP server. Now, there's one last thing that I need to point out to everybody. Inside of our MCP server, you can see here up at the top, I have published. Now, this is kind of a new thing with N8N. Used to, hey, you can save something and then you can click down on the button, execute workflow. Once you publish it, then you're going to be using your production level URL. So here in your example, make certain that this is the production, right? There's no test in here or anything else. Because in order for you to get access into your MCP server is going to have to be published, right? And this is one of the things we were talking about with that long-awaited kind of keeping the communication layer open. And down here as well, make certain that we're calling get info. You may have call, and then this is in single quotes. Make certain that you have the exact name up here, right? So you can change it to anything and get rid of anything that might say call or have a single quote in front of it, just to clean that up. And then the other thing that you're going to also need to do is the set info and the get info. These are the workflows that are being called from our MCP server. Each one of these also needs to be published. All right, so just one of the nuances of N8N. Make certain that everything in here has been published. Otherwise, you're just going to get some stuff back that says, can't connect, or that tool's not running, things along those lines. So with all of that, that pretty much concludes our development of the client. Talked about the MCP server over on N8N, a few little gotchas. But you have everything. This entire client code is going to be up in the part 3 on the repo. So go ahead and check that out. But until next time, thanks a lot, everybody. All right, so that completes everything. Hopefully you have a good understanding about what was going on with the code and the execution back and forth. A couple of the finer nuances to set up, obviously on the N8N server side of the house. But after everything that we've gone through, relatively straightforward, right? Minimal changes on the N8N side of the house. So anyways, let me know down in the comments what you got out of the playlist. If you have any other questions that I'm happy to answer for you, and what else you might like to see from the channel. But until then, we look forward to seeing you in the next video, where I might do some series based off some of the questions that you guys put below. But until then, take care, everybody.